So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started, Yuki. We are covering authorization, utilization, or hour-based authorizations today, and advanced BI in the Central Reach platform. I'm Katie. I am a solutions consultant here at Central Reach, so I'll be managing the Q&A. And then our wonderful host, Yuki, she is our director of product management for data analytics here at Central Reach. She has been in the healthcare tech data world since 2009. So she has a lot of great experience to share with us and lots of insights. So yeah, without further ado, let's keep going. Let's run through this.
Okay, so today, as usual, have a packed agenda. We are going to talk about authorization in the next 30 minutes, and we're going to focus on one of our newer dashboard is around the utilization for the hourly base one. Before we, kind of like dive into the actual dashboard and give you a demo, I want to first kind of talk about like what is really the purpose, what is our focus, how is that potentially different from some other dashboard that you have seen around authorization. And then we'll go into a little bit of the data, nothing too technical, but then want to give you a sense in terms of like what data is being included, what is being excluded, so you fully understand when you look at a number, what does that really mean? And then we'll dive into a little bit of the metric calculation. Then we'll wrap it up with an overview of the dashboard, some tips and tricks, how other organizations have been using it, what is the best way to navigate it. Next, talk about a little bit like why do we develop this dashboard? One of the key things that this dashboard is trying to offer you is prorated authorized hours. What does it really mean is, especially in the ABA world, a lot of time when we look at an authorization, let's say you have 600 hours for a 6 months time period, for a 9753 for the direct therapy. What it really means is most of the time, like you want to evenly distribute it. It will be like, okay, 600 hours and 6 months, and that means about 100 hours per month. If it is about 4 weeks per month in the month, then it's about 25 hours per week. So that we want to bring it into a way for you to track it and see if you're on track. So what it will help you is, okay, let's say your authorization is 2/3 of the way done. Is your authorized hours being used up like 2/3 of the way as well? And then the other beauty of it is when you look at multiple authorization, like, at any point you easily have 50, 100, 200 different authorization in the same month. And with some of them start at that month, in the middle of it, and in the middle of the month, or like have the full month, then you need to factor all this in, become very, very challenging. So this dashboard is going to be able to like factor all this in and say that like, okay, for this month, you have 2,000 hours. And, how did you utilize this 2,000 hours, based on the prorated metric. And then you will be able to see like underutilization, overutilization, and as well as tracking it. So like month to month, if, again, example, if each month you're expecting 100 hours, how much of this 100 hours did you use up for this specific authorization, and be able to look at it for multiple authorization. One thing that I also want to mention, some of you may notice that we have another dashboard before, this newer one called authorization analysis dashboard. And you may ask like, wait, so what's the difference? Which one should I use? So really high level for the authorization analysis dashboard, kind of original one, it focused a little bit more on like looking at the authorization as a whole. So one of the use cases is, okay, let's say you have 10 authorization expired last month, and you want to look at the authorization as a whole. So no matter it's a 6 months authorization or 1 year authorization, you want to see like, okay, what is my, total utilization rate? Do you use up like 70% of it, 50% of it, and then be able to look at it like this? While this dashboard office is more about like prorating the authorization hours and evenly distributing it. So tracking more than month-to-month usage. Another, question I get often is if your, BCBA want to just see like, okay, for this week or for this month, how many more authorization do they have left for specific auth or specific client? I would actually recommend them to use the authorization section under the billing tab in our kind of core product. This will give you the most real-time data, because after all, advanced BI, we update nightly, so it will potentially be 1 day late. So if you want to get the most up-to-date information, I would recommend using that. Okay, a lot of the background information here. Let's dive into this specific dashboard, and let me show you what data do we actually include or exclude in this case. So, okay, here you will see that like I have a screenshot of like, what an authorization would look like when you set it up. So we look at everything by the authorization group. What it means is you can technically put in multiple code. In this case, I have, 397153 and most of the time what we see is one is for center base, one is for home base, and then like the other one's for telemat. So you will have 3 different code all sharing this same 240 hours. So one of the things is like this field, if it is blank, then this authorization won't be included in our new data set that we created for this dashboard. The reason is, as I mentioned before, we basically take this number divided by the number of days that you have in this authorization and be able to evenly distribute it. So that becomes like kind of the key number that we're looking for. The other things that we exclude in the data set is anyone that is frequency with once. So like in this case, frequency is weekly, so it is fine. When it's once, we exclude it, and the reason is a lot of those authorization is more like assessment. So if you have like 10 hours for every 6 months, it really doesn't make sense for us to evenly distribute this 10 hours across 6 months. And it would just create a lot of noise, a lot of extra kind of record that will kind of take away your focus on the kind of real crush of it. So that's why we exclude it. Okay, now you know what is included, what is excluded. So let's talk about our key metric. Probably no surprise, the key measure that we're doing here is authorization utilization rate. How we calculate it is we take your total work hours, basically from the billing entry that is associated with this authorization group. We exclude anything that's void or deleted, but we do include both billable and non-billable billing entry, and then come up with this total work hours. And then we take the prorated authorized hours. Again, that will depending on the day range that you pick, and that will allow us to then adjust it accordingly. So let me go into an example. It will probably give you a better sense how we can organize the information. Here, I have an example that I have an authorization that is from January to August, 240 days, just to make the math easier. So we have 240 hours. So that means each day you basically have 1 hour. And we then put everything into a daily record. So in this case, we'll have 240 record for each of the day. And then we line it up and say like, okay, for day 1, we have 1 hour authorized hours. Do we have any work hours? No. And then day 2, we have 3 hours. So it will probably look weird if you look at one day at a time, but then most likely you're not going to look at authorization by day. You will look at it like at least in a weekly or monthly or quarterly. So in this case, for this 2 weeks time frame, we will have 14 hours that is kind of authorized, prorated, and then 8 hours that's work, then it will come out to be like 57%. And you can also look at it by week. So like week 1, then it will be 71%, week 2 will be 43%. And you can look at that will allow us basically do any day range that you want. It could be from like really specific start day and end day to like give me the whole Q4 of 2023. With that, we can also do kind of a little bit of flip side to show you like, okay, out of this 14 hours, basically 6 hours that is prorated, authorized, but you didn't work it. So it's kind of a little bit showing you the opportunity you are leaving on the table. And one thing that is not showing up here in this grid is schedule hours. We actually also put in schedule hours for any future days. So for example, now we are kind of at the end of April, so we won't have any schedule hours that populate for anything before like April. But then like starting in May, then we will have schedule hours if there's any schedule hours that's tied to this authorization to give you, a sense on a little bit projecting out to the future. Okay, just 2 more pieces of information before we dive into the dashboard. One thing I want to remind everyone, we also use the service code type and category here. You will be able to look at authorization by supervision only, or for parent training only, or direct therapy. So if you haven't categorized your service code, highly recommend you to do it. And your CSL will be able to help you, walk you through, because a lot of our dashboard actually is using this breakdown to help us. The other thing is, I think I saw a question coming in for client accepted hours. So earlier this year, we did an enhancement to also pull in client accepted hours. For those who is not familiar with client accepted hours, for each of your authorization, if you go to the frequency and amounts tab, at the bottom, you will be able to put in client accepted hours. Usually that means this is, how many hours, let's say the parent can bring the kid to your center and such. We want to bring this into our data set too, because to me, that's what I call the realistic cap. In the example that like, if you get 30 hours per week authorized from your payer, but the parent said, you know what, I can only do 25. That is really your realistic cap. So I want to be able to show you what is your utilization rate based on the client accepted hours. So like, okay, if you're not quite at the 100% that ideally you want to be at for your authorization, is it because you need to have a conversation with the parent to hopefully get more hours with the kid, or it is, you just need to be fully utilizing what is agreed upon. So here will be another information that we put in. Okay, I just walked you through a lot of detail in a very, very short time. Let me pause here a little bit and see if we have any question before we dive into the actual dashboard.
I see a question about assigning authorizations to different supervisors or BCBAs.
Great question. So one of the things that and I will show you again, like when I on the dashboard, we recommend you, let's say you have a BCBA, this is, this BCBA's UKLAM's caseload. I would recommend you to put that BCBA into the authorization manager field. So in our dashboard, you'll be then able to track like, okay, I want to see all the, information or like all the authorization that's under Yuki's caseload, and that's how you could do it. And that field, the good thing about it is it won't impact any of your billing. So if, sometimes depending on the credentialing and the payer requirement, they may require you to bill under the NPI, or like, they have strict rule on that. So that won't impact any of those. So that field is purely just for tracking purposes. So I would recommend using that.
Thanks, Yuki. I have one more question for you on accepted hours that you were just talking about. I had Jesse asking if the client accepted hours are a required field.
Actually, it is not. And in the dashboard, that's why I will actually show you which one is not like, so let's say you have 100 off. How many off actually have client accepted hours populated? So you can kind of take it with a grain of salt. But actually, it is not a required field.
Thanks, Yuki. I think that's all we have for now.
Okay, perfect. So let me share my screen again. Okay, I assume everyone can see my screen. Okay, so where can you find the dashboard? When you go to our front page, under operation, then you will see this dashboard. There's a new one, and this is like the other one that I have mentioned earlier. If you go into this dashboard, let me kind of walk you through on the right-hand side, what is, the filter that's available. First, it's kind of a little bit of a typical dashboard. You will have a day range that you can pick from. So this is like, remember we talk about like, you can pick a month, you can pick like, a specific week, if you want to look at the authorization. So this is going to be the time period that you will pay when you want to look at the authorization utilization. And in this case, since I have biotest data for Q4 last year, so this is the specific day range that I'm picking here. Next, you are going to have a list of filter around the client. So you can look at it by specific location or their status, or drill down into specific client. Another set of filter that we have is going to be the service code on the authorization. As mentioned earlier, we use, the type, the category. So you can look at like, let's say only supervision related authorization if you want to. The next one is going to be payer, like the two is around payer. Payer priority, what it means is it basically allow you to pick primary, secondary, tertiary, and such. Especially if you are in one of those state or area that the secondary payer sometimes require you to have a separate off. So let's say I have 600 hours, you have a primary off, you have a secondary off, then together it will almost look like you have 1,200, which in fact you don't, you only have 600. So we want to be able to like allow you to basically filter that out and say like, hey, I only want to look at my primary. So this is what this filter is for. And then of course, if you really want, you can look at like, let's say I want to look at all my TRICARE, or look at all my Blue Cross Blue Shield authorization, you can use it. And then this is the authorization manager that we mentioned earlier. So this will allow you to kind of look at like, okay, I want to look at all Yuki's caseload. Of course, if you have a client label that detect like, okay, here is all Yuki's caseload, you can also use that too. So you can use the client label here. Okay, next, let's talk about the dashboard itself. Again, the key metric here is looking at authorization utilization rate. If you forgot, like, hey, how is the calculation work? We have a little bit explanation here in an example. And actually, if you go all the way to the bottom, I know a lot of widget here. We also have kind of information at the bottom. A lot of our dashboard have that. And then also keep in mind, we also have the kind of help article here. So if you want more information, I will encourage you to look at our help article as well. Okay, let's go back to the top. So again, you will have like an overall authorization utilization rate for the day range that we are looking at. And then I will kind of show you the denominator and the numerators, which is the work hours as well as the prorated authorized hours. Next, you'll be able to look at by the different type of services or like the different service code category. So again, if you want to like only look at like supervision, then just in case you don't know, most of our dashboard is interactive. Actually, all of them is. So what you just need to do is just click into the widget, then it automatically filter out everything that is supervision. If you want to take this out, you can either clear the selection here, or you can go back to here to edit it. The next one we have is the office. So let's say if you have multiple office and you want to see how your authorization is being utilized per office, then you will see like, okay, here is the 4 different office, and then like the green bar is basically telling you how many prorated authorized hours that is for this period of time for this office. And then out of all, kind of 600 and, 61,000 or 6,100 hours, what percentage is being utilized. So that is the blue line is your authorization rate, utilization rate. And then let's say if we want to look at like, this particular one, then you will then see the weekly trend here, similar metric, and then also monthly trend. And then if you want to toggle to a different one, it's pretty easy. Then you just kind of click into a different one. So you will see that like for this office in the New Jersey office, the authorization hours kind of tip down a little bit in this few weeks. So maybe some of the off expire. You don't have a new off yet. Some kid graduated. And then you can see the blue line. That is your authorization utilization rate. Let's go down a little bit more. Remember earlier, we mentioned about like, we want to also show you kind of the opportunity that you're living on the table. So here we are showing you the non-work one. So the one that is prorated, authorized, but is not work. And then be able to kind of show you all the detail for each of the month. Next, then you can also then look at like, okay, let's say, for the New Jersey office, like, the authorization utilization rate is not as high as I like. What is going on? Then you can see like by the different kind of BCBA, who is the case manager for it, who has like the lowest one. And let's say like, okay, Kurt here seems to be, different. And actually, let me unselect this. So I will have a larger list so you can see it, so you can then see all your BCBA, all the caseload, if in this case. And let's say I say, okay, why is, Andy having, a lower end of kind of the number, and then you will see all the client that's under Andy and be able to see. And let's say like, okay, Scott is the one that will have the lowest one. Then let me skip the next one yet. And then like, here you will see all the detail. Like, so Scott have like 2 authorization. And we'll come back to this a little bit later. Let's talk about, and let me unselect this. So you will see a full picture. So now we're looking at like all Andy's kind of caseload in terms of like the authorization. So I remember earlier someone mentioned about asking about if the client accepted hour is a required field. Since it is not a required field, so here we first want to tell you like, okay, out of all the authorization that we're looking at, what percentage of them actually have a client accepted hour? So in this case, 50%. So 7 out of the 14 authorization actually have client accepted hours populate. And out of this 7, we're looking at by the kind of authorized hours, what percentage is being accepted by the client. Then it's saying that okay, about 75%. So it's basically every 100 hours that is authorized out of this 7, 75 of it is accepted by your client. And then from here, for all the one that is accepted, what is the utilization rate? So it's a little bit lower than 50%. So that means that, before even having a conversation with the parent, you have room to basically increase your utilization rate just from there. Okay, and then you can also look at it by the different clients. So again, no surprise, Scott earlier that we're looking at have the lower end, and then you can click into it. You will see that the utilization rate for the client accepted hours is only at 13% here. Then you can see the detail with the 2 authorization. One is for direct therapy, one is for the supervision. And actually, let me go back to the slide because I have put a slide together just to make it a little bit easier to explain all the different detail. Sorry about, okay. So here is order because there's a lot of data fields. So I want to kind of list it out, what's the equation, make it a little bit easier for you to comprehend. At first, we're going to tell you what is the authorization utilization rate today. So we basically look at your work hours divided by your authorized hours. Then we want to tell you what is the projected one, which means we factor into the schedule hours, and all the kind of raw data is right here. So in case you want to know okay, how many authorized hours, how many work hours, how many is being scheduled. So it will be all listed out here. Then to tell you how many kind of remaining authorized hours that is not scheduled, that is not work. And so kind of this is the area that you're hoping maybe in the coming time, before the authorization, and be able to put that into your schedule. That's why it becomes important to tell you how many days is remaining for this off. Unfortunately, in this case, you have less than 2 weeks left on, and this is calendar day because we don't use business day because each organization can have different number of business days. So this is a strict calendar day calculation. And then to also give you a sense in all the kind of previous time for this authorization, on average, how many work hours do you have per week? And then be able to look at, kind of how many hours you will need to do more to make it up. I totally agree. Obviously, 120 hours is impossible. But then even just to give you a sense that okay, how far apart are you from, getting this 100% utilized? So that is kind of all the metric that you have. So let me go back to the screen, and it is exactly what you see here. And, we have, information like when is the start day, when is the end day. In this case, it's better. We have, a little bit less than 3 months left. So there's, more room that you can make up some of those hours. Like, for example, for the supervision, if you do 8 hours per week, then you can technically use up the remaining hours. I know a big part of it also depending on your, authorization, the payer. Some of them have specific rule how, when you can make up the hours, which one you cannot. So obviously you will need to factor that in. And that's why we also want to give you a link here to be able to see the authorization itself. So in case you need to look at the file, you need to look at the actual authorization in order to get those details. You will have this. And in case you want to look at all the billing entry line item, and then this is where you will have all this. And we have an enhancement coming down the pipeline that is going to give you a link to all the schedule appointment that's related to this authorization. So hopefully it just makes things a little bit easier to navigate. Okay, I just went through a lot of information in a very short time. Let me stop here and see if we have any question.
All right, lots of thank you. Lots of good feedback on the accepted hours utilization. So that's awesome. I do have a question from someone asking if there would be any changes made to the regular auth dashboard. I'm not sure if that means the authorization screen. I'm assuming that's what the question is there. Or the authorization analysis. Oh, yes, Dana said Yes, she means the authorization screen.
Not that I'm aware of, but to be completely honest, like I'm also not in charge of that vertical. So let me double check, but not that I'm aware of in terms of improvement over there. But I do have one improvement on the advanced BI side that's coming down the pipeline. A lot of people really love what they're seeing with the hour one. So a lot of question coming in is like, what, how about the visit base, especially if you're doing other therapy like speech, OT, PT, a lot of time then you start having the visit base authorization. We actually are working on a new data set, a new dashboard that is going to help you to keep track of kind of utilization on the visit base authorization. And our target day is hoping to, come out in June or July, August timeframe. So stay tuned. More information will come, and that one will be a little bit different. It won't be like kind of like a daily kind of breakdown, that kind of prorated hours, which work better with the ABA related authorization.
I also have, thank you, Yuki. I also have a question since you're talking about upcoming enhancements, additions. Someone's asking about unit-based
Great.
authorizations. Is this an option in the future?
We are definitely looking at it. That one, I don't have a timeline quite yet, but I promise you, we are looking at it. Definitely hear you for those that is using more unit-based authorization.
Thanks, Yuki. I have another question on. Okay. Tom is asking, will cancellations be available as a component of scheduled auth utilization? So I think he's talking about that details table where we see the scheduled hours. What does that include? And then if it doesn't include cancellations, would that be available?
I see. Yes, it does not include any cancellation. So we only take into account of the schedule hours that is not canceled. We can think about a little bit more, like what kind of cancellation information. We'd love to, talk to you, Tom, more about this, and pick your brain in terms of what information will be kind of helpful here. Right now, we don't really have any kind of enhancement plan for that, but would love to learn more about your use case.
All right.
Close to time. The other thing that I also want to remind everyone is we are going to have CL Unite this year in LA in September. So if you have not registered, definitely encourage you to register. And lots of exciting things coming down for that. We're doing a lot of planning for the ABI side. We're definitely going to have several sessions talking about different kind of data from financial side to clinical area. So we'd love to have you join us as well.